This is Greg from Traxta, and we're looking at our 2015 Honda Pilot Trail Sport Edition lift kit. Now, we were quite lucky. We had one of these in here for 5 weeks, and we spent a lot of time playing around with it and trying different things. I'm going to review with you what the parts are in the kit and talk about some of the choices we made, and then some of the tech support advice I'd have for you while you go ahead and put this kit in. This kit is a modern chassis. It's got all the latest tricks of what they're doing these days on these midsize SUVs. The bushings are all really tight for it. They give it that agile feel when you're going down a twisty road. It's got a different subframe entirely on the front than the old generation of Pilot. In the rear, it's totally different than the old generation of Pilot as well, though it seems more similar. It has definitely got shorter arms. So like the rear suspension arms are 17 inches on the old Pilot for the main arm, and this one's 14 inches. The headache it gave us in the rear was a bunch of camber change when we lifted it. In the front, the front control arm has a new style entirely. It's way different than the last generation. And we found that it would only descend so far before the subframe and the control arm contact. So starting at the front spacer, that's these guys here. You can see on top we have this sliding plate. This sliding plate is to correct camber. On the front, when you lift up on a McPherson strut vehicle, as you go higher, then you get a positive camber change. That means the top of the tire starts sticking out more than the bottom of the tire. So this sliding plate here lets the alignment technician set the camber to wherever they want it to be. And then also on the front, we have these sway bar links that are shorter in proportion to the spacer is taller. So as we add height to the strut, we have to take length out of the sway bar link in proportion. These 6 little circles here that are 1/2 inch thick, we use these as subframe drops on the front. So these go between the subframe and the unibody. We use the stock front subframe bolts. We don't need a replacement bolt for there. And then this is the 1/2 inch spacer for the motor mount. If we drop the subframe, we have to also drop the motor mount on the passenger side, because that connects the passenger side of the engine to the fender well of the unibody. And of course, if we don't drop that, we'll get a vibration in the CV. So with the front, we're lifting 1.5 inches. We're dropping the front subframe 1/2 inch and the motor 1/2 inch. And this way, the relative angle change of your CVs is only like it had a 1 inch lift in it, which is very tiny. I would expect 0 impact from the lift on the CV angles. To go along with that subframe drop, this piece of foam here, this in blue, goes on the steering rack boot to keep it all wind tight and not have air into the cabin. For the rear, we have these 1.5 inch spacers here. We tried a bunch of different heights on the rear spacers. And what we ended up with was a 1 inch subframe drop with 1.5 inch tall spring spacer, causing a relative shift as far as the axle is concerned of only 1/2 inch. And the primary reason for the 1 inch subframe drop is to control the rear camber angles. Again, as we went up with the very short suspension arms on this generation of Pilot, these arms are only 14 inches long instead of 17 inches long like on the last generation Pilot. So those arms caused a lot of positive camber change as we went up. And so by dropping the subframe, we mitigate some of that. We get rid of 2/3 of the change in the angle. So to drop the rear subframe, what we're using is these parts here, these 4 subframe spacers, as well as these 2 rear subframe support spacers, and these 4 pieces of DOM that support the front brackets. We are having to replace the bolts on the rear subframe, which are included in the kit. And of course, to finish it all off, in the rear, we have these shock extensions, which extend the length of the shock so the shock doesn't top out and give you a rough ride. as well as we've devised these brake line brackets that move the brake line down 1.5 inches. And so the hydraulic hose is not pulled tight in any situation while driving the vehicle off-road. So, if you're off-road and the wheel goes to full extension, the brake line will still be safe. We include the nuts and bolts to mount all up for you. And there is your complete kit, your 2015 Honda Pilot Trail Sport kit. If you have any further questions, just email us at sales@traxta.com or call us at 888-660-5892.